Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, want to thank the staff and members for their work this year and wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday Season. H.R. 3359 creates a process for relatives of homicide victims to request that federal agencies re-review the case of their lost family member once the case has gone cold. But we should be clear about what this bill does and doesn't do. This bill would only apply to federal cases of murder. It wouldn't apply, for example, to the most murder cases, which are investigated by state and local law enforcement. The majority of cold cases at issue under this bill are likely to be cases arising from tribal jurisdictions. Fortunately, President Trump has already taken steps to try to solve cold cases in tribal jurisdictions. In November of 2019, President Trump signed an executive order to create the Operation Lady Justice Task Force. In its first year, this task force opened 7 offices across the country to address the number of missing and murdered Indigenous women. The task force held listening sessions, tribal consultations, webinars, meetings with law enforcement and victim services programs, and formed domestic violence and sexual assault coalitions. The task force put out guidance and protocols, developed relationships with entities like missing persons, clearinghouses, began training for investigators and volunteers, and started a public awareness campaign. That was all in 2020. What has the Biden administration done with this important initiative? Short answer is we don't know. The task force was supposed to put out a report in November, but we haven't seen anything from the Biden administration yet. Mr. Chairman, the legislation before us today is something that the Department of Justice could frankly do without new legislation. This committee should do the work to understand whether the Biden administration is taking this issue seriously, whether the existing task force or other programs are effectively reevaluating cold case files before Congress intervenes to mandate time and resources to a new process. And our committee has not held a hearing on this topic or done any other work to help understand if or why this bill is needed. I would like to add too, Mr. Chairman, this committee, though, did have a hearing 48 days ago. 48 days ago, when the Attorney General came in front of this committee and misled us as members of the Judiciary Committee, and more importantly, misled the American people. On October 21st, the Attorney General sat in front of the House Judiciary Committee and made this statement, quote, "I could not imagine any circumstance where parents are treated as domestic terrorists." Now, the only problem with that statement was 24 hours before, the FBI counterterrorism director, Tim Langen, had sent out an email to FBI agents around the country doing just what the Attorney General said wasn't going on. Sent out an email saying, use counterterrorism measures against moms and dads who are showing up at school board meetings, speaking out against a curriculum they don't want taught to their children. An email that went out to the special agents in charge around the country from Tim Langen saying, treat parents as domestic terrorists, put this threat tag label, threat tag designation on parents. So we'd like to have the Attorney General back in front of this committee to answer our questions. Last Thursday, we sent you a letter, Mr. Chairman, asking you to do that, to actually subpoena the Attorney General, the head of the FBI. We've also asked for documents related to this issue from both of those organizations, the FBI and the Justice Department, as well as the Department of Education, and information that Ms. Garcia, the head of the School Boards Association, president of the School Boards Association, one of the signers of the letter on September 29th that helped initiate this ridiculous process. So we sent that letter last Thursday. Today we have a resolution, Mr. Chairman, a resolution which says that upon adoption of this resolution, the chairman of the Committee of the Judiciary shall issue subpoenas to the following: Dr. Viola Garcia, President of the National School Boards Association, the Honorable Merrick Garland, Attorney General of the United States, the Honorable Christopher Wray, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Honorable Miguel Cardona, Secretary, Department of Education. Because here's what we know. We know before the letter was sent on the 29th, there was all kinds of communications between the School Board Association, the Biden administration. 2 days after the letter was sent, we know that Tim Langen, the same guy who sent the email, was already talking with the Justice Department on how to implement what was contained in the letter before the memo from Mr. Garland was ever sent. So before the October 4th memo on October 2nd and 3rd that weekend, we know from testimony in front of the Intel Committee that Mr. Langen was already trying to figure out how they were going to implement what the School Boards Association asked President Biden to do. So I would ask, Mr. Chairman, unanimous consent that the resolution be brought up so that we could subpoena these individuals and, more importantly, the documents that we need to have so we can do our job and figure out just how much the Attorney General
Objection.
misled this committee and the American people.
Objection is heard.
What's the objection to?
Is offered.
The gentleman is recognized for an opening statement. Does he wish to continue his opening statement?
Well, I made a unanimous consent request, and
An objection was heard to that.